The microscope and the telescope are very similar in how they're designed. The difference, of course, being that we use a telescope to look at objects that are far away and we use a microscope to look at objects that are close up. But as I said, the basic design, very similar. So in both cases, you've got your objective, and then you also have your eyepiece. In the case of a telescope, we're looking at objects that are very far away, but for microscopes, we're looking at objects that are close. And so what you want to do is you have your focal length for the objective, and the object is usually put just outside of the focal length. Now, in the past, I've drawn a person for this. It doesn't make sense to use a person for a microscope, so I'm going to draw an arrow. That's the focal length of the objective, and the object is just outside of that. This is going to create an image some distance away from the objective, well past the focal length of the objective. And what we want to do is we're going to adjust where the eyepiece is so that this image that's created is right at the focal length of the eyepiece. So if the image of the arrow is right here, then the eyepiece is placed so that that is, oops, not a 3, excuse me. So that's the focal length of the eyepiece. And this distance here from the objective to the image is, of course, the image distance, and it's going to be equal, and this should be pretty straightforward. This is the entire length of the microscope. So this is just the length minus the focal length of the eyepiece. And of course, for the microscope, just like with the telescope, we are using the relaxed eye so that the image, or I should say the light rays that are going to come from here, they come from this arrow. They're coming out, they're parallel to each other, and so the image is formed an infinite distance away. We're using the relaxed eye. Now, in this problem, you were asked for 4 things. 3 of them are pretty straightforward to get. The magnification of the microscope, the focal length of the eyepiece, and the object distance. These should be pretty straightforward for you to figure out. The formulas for the microscope are up at the top in the content section. Look at those. You should be able to use the values given to quickly determine those 3 things. If you find yourself spending an inordinate amount of time trying to figure those out, you're making it more difficult than it needs to be. It should be pretty straightforward. The difficult one is determining the focal length of the objective. That is not straightforward, and so I'm going to go over that, how to get the focal length of the objective. Now, we don't have a lot of options in terms of formulas, and the one that immediately comes to mind, since we are dealing with optics, is to use our optic formula. Using the optic formula, you should be able to get the focal length of the objective, because you know, if you do those other things, you should have figured out the object distance, and you should be able to get the image distance based on the discussion that I've just given you. And with all that, you should be able to get the focal length of the objective.